Hello, I'm Robert Thiemann. I'm the founder of Frame. Welcome to Frame Live. Today we will be talking about events. Events, who doesn't like them? We like to go to festivals, we like to go to exhibitions, we like to go to all kinds of trade fairs, especially in this profession, but they have all been cancelled over the past months, perhaps with an exception of one or two regional events. And that is a great pity, because that means that we could not enrich ourselves with cultural events. We could not meet other people. We could not take note of new products, of new cars, of new fashion. And event organizers have had to organize all kinds of things to reach their target groups and to connect people with each other. Events are successful when they are immersive, when they speak to our senses, when we can touch, feel, and do a lot more with our senses. And if we can speak to other people, if we can collaborate with other people, if we can meet new people and meet up again with our friends. So there's a really human aspect to events, and there's an aspect that is, let's say, speaking to the individual when it comes to speaking to the senses. And all of this couldn't really happen over the past months. So that meant that lots of virtual events have been taking place. What is that, virtual? Basically, it means an event that tries to mimic what a physical event normally is. But if you look closely at the virtual events that have been taking place over the past months, none of them did that. They didn't speak to the senses. They didn't connect people. So what's the way forward for events, especially in this time? We will speak about that with a panel consisting of, let me show you who they are. Yes, here they are. Waiting for Anika Meier, because that's who I'm talking about. She is an independent curator and writer. And she is here for an exhibition that she curated and hosted on behalf of König Galerie. She's not with us at the moment. Hope to see her soon. Then people who are with us are Lara, Lesmes and Fredrik Hellberg of Space Popular. Raise your hands, please. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, thank
Hello.
you.
And you're in currently?
We're in London.
London.
Okay, well, there is Anika. Great. Well, I just introduced you a minute ago. I was saying to the audience that you are an independent curator and writer, and that we invited you to this session because of your work for Galerie König, and especially the work that you did with an artist who created virtual works of art. Welcome, Anika. Then Lara and Fredrik, you created an exhibition for RIBA in London about architecture, which I would say was a hybrid exhibition.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And there's Bart Veen, and Bart is the founder of the agency Bart, events creators, but especially for brands. And Bart created a really special event that we featured in Frame magazine for the tire manufacturer Vredestein. That's a real Dutch name. And that was also an online virtual event. And that's why we invited Bart here. And as I told you before, we're here to discuss what makes a great event. What do we currently think of the virtual events that have been taking place? And what is the future of events? Will the future of events be virtual? Will we go back to physical events? Or will we see hybrids in the future? And if so, why? And what will they look like? So that's what we're going to discuss. And we have a very specific format for that, which is all about images. Otherwise, you would be looking at us all the time. And although we are very nice people to look at, I think you perhaps will also enjoy looking at some creations of these people that they will speak around to answer my questions. So therefore, I'm going to share my screen and show you a little presentation. So these people are here. And the first question I'm going to ask them is, what makes a great event? Lara and Fredrik, you sent me this image.
Yes,
Yeah.
we
Thank
did.
you, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just summarize very quickly why we chose this image and why we think it represents for us what a great event is. This is from an event we organized at Arctis in Stockholm, the National Center for Architecture and Design in Sweden, in the middle of our solo exhibition, Value in the Virtual, which was curated by James Teller Foster. And we think that this, for us, symbolizes a great event because this event was a discussion around the issues revolving around the future of the immersive internet and what augmented reality and the surrounding technologies will do to our cities in the next 30 years. That's also what the exhibition was about. And on top of that, the group of people that we managed to assemble were also people that were interested in this and they were expert. And we were there with our group of students from the Architectural Association in London who were studying the very same topic. So for us, this kind of like summarizes all of these qualities that we think are important to come together in a great event, that there's a context where the space, the topic, the people that are there,
the institution, that everything comes together. If anything is missing one thing, which is a good bridge to the virtual realm, to be able to bring in also people from further away. But this was a couple of years ago, where when we went, we were not so acquainted with methods of doing that. So if anything, that would be the only point missing. But overall, this was a wonderful event.
Thank you. But is it true that this is especially a good event for you because it brings people together?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in this specific case, it's around a very specific topic, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. The topic could be dancing, or it could be something else. If it's dancing, then you want the same qualities to have as much relevance for the group of people that are there. That the space and the environment and the people that are there, and that they all somehow sync up. Then, of course, what's missing from here is the element of kind of surprise or discovery. But many of the groups of people who were here, they didn't know each other. And throughout this evening, that also could be facilitated.
So actually you brought people together in this space, and the space enhanced, let's say, the message.
Exactly, yeah, yes.
And the only downside is that you had to be there to enjoy it to enjoy it all. So it was rather limited in its reach.
Yeah, exactly.
The downside is not that we had to be there. It's great that we had to be there, but that people couldn't be there in other forms other than in their physical bodies. Mm-hmm. That's the downside.
And we should add just that in this exhibition, which ran for about 8 months, there was a virtual reality headset, which was linked to an online platform through a social VR world called Sansar, where there was like a mirror where people could join virtually through avatars from anywhere in the world. But the doorways through virtual worlds into physical worlds are often very, very narrow, and they are kind of single directional, and you're either inside the virtual world or you're outside of it. And looking at a monitor, seeing avatars is nowhere near as engaging as interacting with our bodies in space with all the senses connected.
This state of hardware and networks is what was limiting us a little bit from this being full on the kind of event we would hope to create.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anika, this is the exhibition that I was talking about. This is the exhibition that you co-curated for König Galerie. Why was this a great event for you?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm very sorry for being late, technical issues, but here I am. Yes, I chose an image of a virtual event, even though I pretty much could have chosen like an image from any event that happened in the past where people come together. But I think what we're working on at König Galerie is making art more accessible. And here, this piece by Manuel Rosner was planned to be a VR piece for a group show that was going to happen in real life at the gallery. The show was supposed to open early April, but we had to postpone it due to COVID. And yeah, before that happened, Manuel Rosner had the idea to think about how more people can see the VR piece, because, you know, it would have been a big show. People would have to queue and would have to wait to be able to see the piece in VR. So he was thinking about, what can I do? And he came up with the idea of making the VR piece available via an app. So we built an app, and the idea here is, how does art work in the digital realm, and especially how can people interact with art? And that's why I think it's a good show, because we tried new ways for people, letting them interact with art. You can see the sculptures here, the green one on the left side, and you had this little avatar. You walked around, or you can still walk around in the exhibition space, and people could jump on the sculptures and throw them around. They could jump into the blue bubbles and onto the yellow sort of sculpture thing. So yeah, that's why I think it's a new approach to experiencing art.
So what made this event great in your case is the fact that it opened up new possibilities to interact, to experience art that didn't, let's say, exist before, or that you didn't try before.
Yes, and I think it's not possible to throw a sculpture around in real life, probably in a gallery space. I mean, that's not what museums do. They don't put up sculptures and then you can jump on them. Yeah, people quite enjoyed that. And you usually, you can't, I mean, on the other side of the gallery space, there are stones, and then you had to jump on the stones like in a real video game. And then, you could walk right under the ceiling and, jump into the bubbles and walk up on a sculpture again and then jump down. So it's like a real jump and run exhibition experience. So something that would not be possible probably in the real space, or it would be very difficult to build, I guess.
Do you know who actually visited this experience or exhibition?
Who?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we know how many people downloaded the app, and on launch day, we posted on Instagram, Johan, the gallery, and myself, we did an Instagram posting in which we said, well, there's a new show online, please go and look for it on the internet. And then every hour we posted a hint on Instagram, so that people somehow, got a direction where to look for the exhibition. So we got a lot of feedback from people. And after, I think, 2 or 3 hours, the first people, found the exhibition. They looked on bigger pages, they looked on the website, they looked at Artsy. And at some point they figured out that they have to download a new app. So we got a lot of feedback from people. And yeah, it's people interested in digital art. It's many of our followers, friends, other artists. Yeah, it's been.
You also reach a new demographic?
Yeah, probably a younger audience, people interested in digital art for sure. Lots of artists who work in this medium. Yeah.
And what kind of feedback did you get from people who experienced the exhibition?
They had lots of fun, walking around as an avatar in the gallery space and jump around. I mean, that was also the fun part for me, because we released it during the lockdown, and I couldn't go myself to the gallery because I was in Hamburg. And so I sat at home on my couch and I was like, oh, I would like to go to the gallery. And then I just opened the app and could walk around in the middle of the night. That was quite fun for people. Yeah, basically and we hid an Easter egg. So, people were also looking for that Easter egg, and they were trying out different things. And some people didn't know how to, if you're not super experienced with games, then you're not used to, having to figure out how things work. but we placed little signs on the floor so that people understood there was a sign straight to the stones, but some people sort of didn't understand and tried to climb up the ladder. So I think it was also interesting that you had to find out how you can actually experience the exhibition, because usually you enter a space and then there's paintings and you stand in front of a painting, but here you had to figure out how to get into the bubbles and what you can do and what happens. And there's also a staircase, so you had to walk around the blue bubbles and then enter the staircase, and then you could also walk up the bell tower that's usually closed. People can't visit. So yeah, that's what they enjoyed, exploring the gallery space and exploring the art and throwing around green and yellow sculptures.
So they enjoyed experiencing the gallery space in ways that they normally can't.
Yes.
And interact with art in which that they normally can't. So you opened up a new kind of experiencing of art, and I hear you use the word gamification. That is something to stick to and to come back to later on in this session. Thank you, Anika.
Thank you.
And Bart, you send us this image. What does it represent for you?
This is just pure magic for me. All the ingredients were there, and it felt like either orchestra playing perfectly in line with each other. Every single element was enhancing the other one.
What is it before you continue? What are we looking at?
We're looking at the private showcase of Billie Eilish, hosted by Apple Music in the Steve Jobs Theater, with a magical set design of S. Devlin. And it was so pure. I've been watching this show, I think 5 or 6 times already in the last 6 months. So that already answered the question, what makes a great event? That's the one that's deep rooted in my mind. And yeah, this was, I think, pure magic.
And what made it so magical for you?
Because all the elements fitted right in, but it also made sense. There has to be a certain purpose behind an event. And the purpose of Apple Music is that they want to make it possible for artists to discover their fans and the other way around. And Billie Eilish is very authentic as an artist. And she really made that connection with her fans in a way that I hadn't seen before. And her music is very, very pure. So yeah, I feel events, and this one I'm still feeling today. So that's what makes a good event for me.
When did you first see it?
I think about 6 months ago.
So was that during lockdown?
No, it was before, but I've been watching it during lockdown a couple times.
Could you imagine that actually witnessing this show as a live event, I mean a physical event, that it would be even more magic?
Yeah, yeah. I really wanted to be there.
So in the end, this show in a physical format would have probably made a bigger impact.
For sure, yeah.
Yet you selected as the example for you what makes a great event. And we're talking about a virtual event. So could that be because we have been through this period of lockdown, and in the Netherlands we have another sort of lockdown again? Is that maybe also a reason why you particularly like this event? Because you can revisit it.
Yeah.
Which you cannot do if you only would have witnessed it in real life.
Yeah. But having the audience there makes it even more special, because you really can see and feel the atmosphere. And if there was no audience and it was just Billy and her brother giving a great performance in a great set, then you were missing that one element that complements a great event.
Thank you, Bart. Let's move on to the second point of discussion. Virtual events. You've all created virtual events in any shape or form in the past year, in the past half year, I'd like to say. And as we have summed up before, virtual shows have certainly advantages. You can reach a very wide audience. You can reach many people, much more than with any physical event at a certain moment in time. But they also have their limitations. So which challenges have you been facing while creating a virtual event? What could be improved? What did you like on the other hand? That's what I would like to hear from you. And first from Lara and Fredrik.
Yes, so we chose this screenshot of the virtual version of our exhibition Freestyle, which opened at the RIBA in the end of February, very timely. And of course it closed like a few days after opening. And we rushed to create a virtual version of it, precisely because the exhibition was dealing with the relationship of architecture and media, and culminating like towards the end of the show of the exhibition space, one would look at our projections of how new media is once again going to transform architecture. So we rushed to bring it online in order to allow more people to come in, more people than the few that managed to come to the opening night. And firstly, one thing that we think is great is that this event, which is a guided tour given by the curator Shumi Bose, who got incredibly good at giving these virtual guided tours. One thing that is great is the platform in which it is running. It is running through the platform Mozilla Hubs, which has a manifesto. It has basically an ethical manifesto that we very much agree with. And not only that, but it also...
Can you say a little bit more about this manifesto and why you agree with it?
They have the Mozilla Foundation. They release the Internet Health Report every year. They have basically a manifesto for a healthy internet, not driven by revenue-driven massive companies that are sourcing your data. So
but not driven by advertisement.
Yeah.
It can still be driven by revenue-driven businesses, but not necessarily just pure advertisement.
Yeah. So we chose to use this, and also within this very exhibition, we did a series of workshops with students in high schools in London, using this platform as a way to kind of vote for what the immersive internet we want to see, perhaps not owned by these companies that are sustained by advertisement, etc., and that are profiting of kind of manipulating the way that we approach content. So that's very important for us, and also the fact that
this platform allows you to host virtual spaces directly on websites that are accessible via browser, that from almost any device. Depends a little bit on how optimized your virtual world is, but you could potentially even access from your smartphone. So that's, even though there's still some barriers to that, it's different than just being able to walk into a show. But it still gives access to many more people who just has an internet connection and an enabled device. And secondly, what makes it what's important about these virtual events is something that we don't have in this kind of video calls, which is spatial audio. Each of these little avatars are moving around the room, and their audio, their microphone moves with them. So the farther away from my avatar that they go, the lower their voice gets, just like in real life. And so what that creates is the possibility for chit chat, the possibility for having side conversation, the possibility for actually like facing somebody, even if you look really abstract, you look like a little colorful robot. It brings body language to a certain extent into the interaction, and we think that is possibly much more valuable than a video stream of your face. So those are the elements that we think the virtual brings. Yeah.
And then just other interesting thing to note here, the exhibition itself discusses in a very kind of big perspective, 50 years into the future, what immersive media might do to architecture. And many of our exhibitions in the past 5 years have been speculative in that and dealing with the 30-year future. And it was interesting for us because these tools that we use to do research in now was the very tool we had to use to bring it to people who wanted to see it, which was a really interesting kind of side loop. You see these spheres there at the top of the image. They are 360 videos from the 4 virtual films that you could see through VR headsets in the real exhibition. And funnily enough, even though you could see this as a kind of limited version of the real physical exhibition, with this online exhibition, you could see it together with anyone from around the world, because you could literally walk in to the 3-dimensional space, the 360 video, and you could be up to 30 people in there, watch it at the same time, and from anywhere in the world, and the exhibition never closes. And Shumi and us, we continue to do tours in this exhibition since it opened in May, even though the physical exhibition is closed, even if it's still there at RBA in London, but not accessible physically.
So of course it's a virtual version, and as you said before, the definition of virtual itself is that which is something else in essence, but not in its entirety, right? So it is not the exhibition in its entirety only because it's missing the physical element, which creates the mixed reality experience, the haptic and visual, and the here and there physical and virtual element that we try to have in all of our shows. And we think there is ways for this to evolve, for exhibitions to reach locations that are beyond the gallery. But we think they should always continue to embrace a connection and an awareness of the physical, even if the physical part is people's homes.
It sounds like you're very happy with this exhibition and with the virtuality of it. What were the main challenges in creating it? Because it was not intended to be virtual only, right?
No, it was never intended to go up like this, even if that's what the exhibition is essentially about. And the big challenge was that, which I think is something that we all have in common, is thinking about this translation of looking at the physical to then understand what might happen in the virtual. And in many cases, that's completely the wrong way around. This exhibition was translated to have some kind of recognizability to the physical show, which is not at all how we would have designed it if it was meant for the virtual specifically, which has completely different set of affordances. And it's very common to think like, this is what I would want from a physical exhibition or an event, whatever it might be. How can I achieve that in a virtual space, instead of thinking like, what does the virtual space offer, and how we might be completely rethink how to bring those two together. So this is a good example for us of where we really did everything we could to try and carry on the messages and the ideas behind the show, but with a lot of shortcomings, even though we're very happy with it and the fact that thousands of people have got to experience it, even though it's physically closed.
Yeah, I mean, and the very practical issue of just optimization. If we wanted to make it available to as many people as possible, meaning that you didn't have to own a PC or a headset or like a super powerful gaming computer, and download software and so on, then we have to make it incredibly light, which does not necessarily go very well with the usually very intense settings that we create for our immersive films. So that was certainly a true challenge. And would this have been thought to be in this format from the start, then we would have made a very different project. Like, for example, things that we're working on now that are made for being like almost made out of paper as a metaphor, as opposed to made out of.
Thank you correctly. Your advice is to other people to design medium specific and not to simply replicate what you can do in physical exhibitions or physical events. Not simply replicate that online.
Yeah. It's not only advice, it's like there is no other way.
In some cases, references are important, but we have seen, I think, through the pandemic, examples of galleries bringing their shows online where you can see the fire alarms in the ceiling. There's no that's kind of the most extreme example of irrelevant information in a virtual environment. But the fact that there's a door and there's a floor and art is on the wall, you know,
for a few more, for a little bit longer, we'll still probably will need art on the wall and doors and stuff like that, and then probably we will be able to move beyond that eventually, but maybe not yet. So as to not alienate people too much, it's probably good to keep some grounding at the moment.
Thank you, Lara and Fredrik. Anika, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, we're looking at the second digital solo show we did with an artist called Thomas Webb, double B, indeed. And his idea, I mean, I invited him to make a show. I think it was in March, or yeah, it was while we were working on Manuel's show. And his idea was, because we all were on lockdown already, his idea was to bring people together online in a space. And then he thought about, well, how could he do it? And his idea was to build a multiplayer game in 2D, and also to build the gallery space and like to create a real video game. So that's what we did. And what you see here is that was the opening night. We announced the show, I think, the morning of, the opening took place in the evening, and we announced it that day in the morning. And we were a bit scared if the servers, would work, because if you bring all those people together online, things could go wrong. And then we were really surprised that around 5,000 people came to the opening. And Tom built 3 cities, Berlin, Kanagawa, and Osaka. And you started in Berlin, and you had to go to the gallery where you could see Tom's solo show, and you met Johan and myself in there, and we spoke to the people. And then people were invited to walk around, and there's bars and clubs and trains you can take. You even can get a puppy yourself or a hoverboard. And like one of the highlights for people that evening was, Tom built the Club Berghain, and you had to queue, or you have to queue because the game is still online. You have to queue for 60 seconds, and then you meet the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper says, not tonight, like, the gatekeeper sometimes does when you're not allowed to enter Berghain in Berlin, which is quite hard to get into. Because the game, there were so many people that evening, you can see that people were queuing and they were chatting to each other, because we have a chat box, and so many people knew each other from, I don't know, Instagram, through the art world, and some of the people met each other for the first time online in this game. And everyone was excited to queue in front of Berghain. And the funny thing is, actually no one could get into Berghain. And what we didn't anticipate was that, because the first thing that there was is an avatar store. So, someone brought you to the avatar store, and then you could choose who you want to be. And when the gatekeeper said not tonight, people thought, like in real life, they just need something different, they just need to look different. So they went back to the avatar store and chose another avatar and tried again, queuing again. And we didn't anticipate that, because you don't know how people use a game. But at some point, some people asked us, well, how can I get into Berghain? I was like, what? You actually can't get into Berghain. That's the fun part of the game. But there's also a club, and you get beer, and you actually can get drunk. And then when you drink the beer, the whole thing gets blurry, and the text boxes, all the letters mix up and so on. And when I saw it for the first time, Tom broke the game, and I was like really shocked. And I was like, Tom, what did you do? And he was like, no, you're just drunk, I'm sorry. So here the idea was to actually sort of really replicate the spontaneity of the world pre-COVID, but online, so people can go and dance. There's a dance floor, there were DJs playing live music, but we also wanted, like again with Manuel's show a different way of presenting digital art online. So there's the gallery space, like the Church St. Agnes, sort of the headquarters of König Galerie in Berlin. But like I said, it's in 2D, and so people could click on icons, and then they entered rooms, and there again they could interact with digital art. So that's what we were trying here again. And then, like I said, it's also a multiplayer game. like any other video game. You have to work on challenges, and yeah, you can take trains, get puppies, get a hoverboard, enjoy yourself, and you can actually also win the game. But I'm not going to, yeah, I can't I can't tell you more about this. Just play it, and maybe you win or maybe you won't. I think so far only one person has won the game or so, because in the end you have to make a decision.
But in the end, it's again a participatory event, so you can really participate, you can connect with other people, you can enjoy together, and it's a real game, right? It's a work of art, but it's also a game. So is this the next step for art to become gamified?
I don't think for art in general, maybe for digital art. I think because people are used, I mean, when people go to the museum, they now, you know, stand in front of paintings or sculptures or in big installation, and they take selfies and share the photos on Instagram. So people are sort of used to putting themselves in relation to artworks. And I think this is what people are interested in the age of social media, not just to look at art, but also to interact with it and to experience it in a new way. And I think that's more easily translated online with digital art. But I don't think that, yeah, the art world shouldn't move online. I think it's just for a younger generation of artists who grew up on social media, who grew up on the internet, that they want to use those spaces in new ways.
Thank you, Anika. Very interesting. Bart, what about your image? It's Vredestein, the project that we have been talking about in the beginning, the tire manufacturer.
Yeah, you're looking at one of the rooms in the specially designed design museum of Vredestein. And that was a whole process because...
just to make clear to the audience, you designed a virtual museum for this manufacturer of tires, right?
Yeah, that's right. But we first started out in a physical venue. So we didn't know we were going to go completely digital. We had the task to find a new way to communicate with our clients. And we had 3 messages we wanted to put across. They had a new visual identity they wanted to reveal. They were proud on their test winners. The whole tire industry is about performance. So they had 3 tires that were really performing well and gained good results. So they wanted to show them in a sort of Hall of Fame. And they wanted to launch a new all-season tire. So all these 3 messages we needed to get across to the clients. And also
this was a really commercial event.
Yes, it was, but our goal was not to let it feel as a commercial event, but more an experience. But when we started out, we were first thinking about those 3 messages, and we were not thinking digital yet. We were more thinking a television studio. So we found ourselves in the ice stadium here in Holland, in Heerenveen, because we were feeling that we could have real cars there. We could have real tires there. We could have the CEO walking around, making a real connection. And that was good. But we also felt that this was going to be the situation for probably a longer time. So then we went back to, we needed to create a digital canvas where we can build on for a few more events. And then we switched to completely digital. And then we started exploring and researching, and the whole visual identity was about the new brand ID, refined by design. And the visual identity that was designed, it felt like art. So we asked ourselves the question, where does art belong, and where can you really enjoy art the most? And that's in a museum. So let's design a museum.
And what was the response of the clients of Vredestein? We didn't expect this from this tire manufacturer.
No, they were surprised. They were. I mean, in the end, it's about getting the message across. So we revealed the new all-season tire in a way they didn't expect. So they were glad. They were surprised and impressed.
And what did it do for the client?
Well, for the client, it was important they didn't freeze in this time. They really wanted to connect with their clients, to show we're still here. It's a difficult time, but we're here when we want to still be connected with you. So that's why we had 3 speakers to share different perspectives of the consequences of COVID at this time. So we had the CEO to make it really personal. We had a London-based auto journalist who gave the perspective of the consumer and the new role of a car. And we had Daan Rozengaarde, a well-known Dutch designer, who gave his vision on what's the role of design in a new world like this. And that gave some relevance to the event as well. Or else it
sounds like a really cool experience that could perhaps replace car shows in the future. Speaking of which, let's talk about the future of events. So we've discussed what makes a great event. A great event brings people together, speaks to the senses, is taking place in a very specific location. It addresses your individuality, but you are part of this group. You can get new experiences. So that's all clear for physical events. Digital events have some other advantages and some challenges to overcome. But is there a way for the future to create hybrid events? Could digital events, virtual events happen alongside physical events, and could they strengthen each other? Or do we need to go back to physical spaces all over again? So Lara and Fredrik, what's your idea about the future of events?
So we sent this very personal image of a very personal event, which is my niece's 6th birthday last April, like bang in the middle of the most strict lockdown in Spain.
We were in London and they were in Spain.
Yeah, where my family were scattered around Spain, and she was turning 6, and of course she was suddenly being told that she was going to have basically a very different type of birthday party. No friends, no family would be able to come. So I think this is maybe the beginning of that future. Is the same platform as we were talking about before, where we created a world, maybe more of the nature of some of the worlds that Anika was created, a world that was a lot more gamified, for her and the whole family to go on a treasure hunt together to, in the end, reach her birthday cake. And we could all be there with avatars that had our faces on. There you see the kids in the front and Fredrik there towards the back. And my parents were there, so it was a gathering also across generations, which I thought was very important to see that everyone was feeling quite comfortable with it. And my family is by no means acquainted with technology more than the average people in general. So even though we are working with this, they don't really work with it themselves. And it brought us together in a mission. It brought us together also in many different forms, in the form of avatars, in the form of, you can also then eventually turn on the video call, which we did to sing happy birthday in the end. And then we stayed and we started creating new objects there live. And after that happened, the kids continued to ask throughout the lockdown also that we created more worlds to do different things there. And they came up with things like maybe it would be really cool to have one to play hide and seek, or and all sorts of things, which started to make us think that maybe they hold the key to the future of seeing all these possibilities that for us are harder to see. And while we continue to maybe create versions of what we know, they probably have ideas of things that are completely, or that completely emerge from their virtual experiences. And what's really important is that these kids know what it is to create or import models into this virtual world while we are in it. And they don't even know what an email address is or what a link address is. So the way they are being introduced to this through a sort of very backwards way for us is what I think could hold the key to the potential future.
And we chose this, of course, the things that we are doing and that people are doing that is in many cases exciting to look at is much more advanced than the things we work with and when we do immersive cinema, of course, working at the very cutting edge. But we really think that like it's really always about human togetherness, whether it's experiencing art or if it's concerts or whatever it is. And that connection, we chose this image because it's very personal, very direct example of that the value is that connection and the medium is much more secondary. We're just in a moment now when that medium happens to be almost good enough to really have some really meaningful experiences together. And it doesn't always rely on even the quality of that space. Of course, we're here ignoring the fact that people of all ages have been gathering in gaming worlds for decades already. That has a lot more of engagement. In this specific case, things align where a strong human bond can be exercised in a virtual space. And we really think that the future without that, it doesn't matter how many computers or how many cloud connections you have, if you don't have people to actually be there, and that whatever that context happens to be, if it's a bunch of strangers who want to connect to a concert or if it's family members celebrating something.
So you show this image and it speaks about a digital event. Is that the way forward for you?
Not only. I mean, I think we mixed up the answers to the three questions a bit more interwoven in the previous images, where I think an understanding of online worlds that are very, very grounded on where they are experienced from, and not forgetting that whatever we see through the screen is still experienced with a body, a physical body that is maybe sitting on a chair or standing up with a headset on, or holding a phone somewhere on the street. Understanding where it is experienced from is really what's crucial, I think. So the bridge will be the future, and it is not until we acknowledge that and start building for that, understanding that bridge, that we will really explore the full potential of these events.
And often the technology itself is often hampered by the fact that it doesn't have the output or the need, which with all past media, telephone, telegraph, whatever, even if it's either social, political, or even military driving forces, it's all about connecting humans. And if the humans are not there to try and connect, then it won't evolve. So that's why we think this is the future that is, in many cases, like for instance, in the art world, where Anika has a lot more experience than we do, quite often the people that would potentially go, they're not interested in sitting by their computer, some of them, and therefore that connection cannot happen. That's a very, very kind of hard generalization, but in many cases that's what's happening. And for instance, we go to online raves in VR using VR headsets and stuff, and you don't meet the typical raver there. You meet the
online raver,
yeah, which is a completely different type of user or person.
So whatever you do, connect human beings, and actually you're not that interested in the medium to use for that.
No, because the medium where we are interested in thinking about in the next 20 to 30 years, then it's interesting to know roughly what's happening, but you have to keep your eye on the soft things, not the hard things.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Very, very optimistic, I'd say. It's all about human connection. Anika, what's for you the future of events? And I think you want me to play a little video, right?
So yeah, like you said, it's all about human connection and that people can meet each other. So, and when all international art fairs were cancelled, we were thinking about at the gallery, well, what can we do? How is it possible to host an art fair? So Johann König had the idea to do a local art fair in the Berlin gallery space in the Brutalist Church St. Agnes. So galleries and artists were invited to contribute artworks from the primary and second market to the art fair. And it was a 10-day event in summer, and 4,000 people came over 10 days. And what we did online was we used the space Manuel Rosner built for his solo show, and we showed a selection of, I think, 30 to 40 paintings and sculptures in that space. And then we did a second fair because the first one went quite well, also from a sales perspective. So yeah, we did a second show online as well with a selection of works, and here now we try to show digital art in that space, not only paintings and sculptures, but also digital artworks. So Manuel Rosner made a sculpture, and like you saw it, you could again jump around on that sculpture and walk around with the avatar. So yeah, I think the future of events is a combination of local event. I mean, right now during COVID, it's still very difficult for people to travel, and we don't know when that will change. So yeah, the answer right now or also in the future is a combination of a local event together with an online event as for the international audience, I would say.
That sounds really logical. Thank you for that, Anika. And Bart, this is the future for you. Like
I'm hoping that's going to be the future. Yeah, we're looking at 3 images of the same event. It's Tomorrowland. The first part is the physical event we all know. And then COVID hit us, and they decided to go on and to reinvent themselves and find a way to still be connected with their community and have the community connect with each other. So they created a digital version of their festival. But I know for sure that they rather go back to how it was.
What is the digital version of this festival? What does that look like? What can you do there?
It was like a fairy tale that took place in the clouds with different stages, with the DJs playing in digital settings, but they were really there. They were really playing, and they recreated the audience, and they built digital stages of about 300, 500 meters deep. So they really made use of the limitless possibilities you have digital, while in the physical world you all have limits. I mean, you have certain weights you cannot do in your stage, so you are limited to your imagination. And in the digital world, you can go wild.
Thanks, Bart. This brings me to one of the questions from the audience, and that's exactly about this, is why do digital events, digital spaces look so much like our real spaces still? And this is one example of it. And on the other hand, they look very much like computer games, like old-fashioned computer games. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, interesting question. I mean, we had that conversation with our clients as well. And I think it is because we can really comprehend and relate to the dimensions and see the impressiveness of something. if I look at this image of Tomorrowland, I really see it's an impressive stage, but it still has figures I can relate to and I recognize. So yeah, it's a funny thing. I don't really have the answer because there's no good or bad in this.
I think there is two different answers to those two questions. And I think the first one is it's something that we deal with a lot, which is super fascinating conversation. And you can ask the same question, I think, to just make a little analogy, like why in cinema, especially maybe animated cinema, do you have human figures or things that you can relate to, that you understand? If no one would sit through, or few people, a big audience would sit through an hour and a half of completely abstract shapes for an hour and a half. So we operate just within our physical world, within the semiotic language of how we operate, recognizing objects, recognizing other humans, and that's how our entire kind of cognitive way we deal with the world is built up. And it cannot really be that different in a virtual world, because
that's how we feel things. No? So for us to autocomplete and create those and feel those things, even if they are recreated or virtual or whatever we want to call them. And what is real? No, it also brings that question of like which experience is 100% real or not 100% real.
But it's obviously
it has to do with the reference
trajectory where we will be able to see in the next 10 to 15 years where new semiotic and symbolic context gets created in the virtual that it can build on, and probably eventually you will not need to be contained in an avatar, but you could perhaps be sort of controlling the whole architecture, an entire city or something, and other would still be able to relate to you. And the other part of why things look in a certain way, I think, is very, very simply because all of the technology we're using, almost all of it is developed by technology that is initially meant for games. I mean, the platform that we use mainly to create kind of more high quality work, like Unreal Engine. When I started working with that in 2006, it was just a game map modding platform where you could build your own maps for a first-person shooter. And that's now
a piece of that platform, because that's another question from the audience.
Yeah, so that's Unreal Engine by Epic Games, which was originally a modding platform for Unreal Tournament, which is a very, very successful first-person shooter. And now it's used by basically every architect in the whole world, and for the cinema and so like that's one of the main reasons why it looks the way it looks, because all the graphic technology and the way that we relate to avatars and worlds and shading.
It's all about what is it that is necessary to communicate. I think Bart said something really interesting, that they recreated the crowd, no? And then you're like, which channels are important to translate the music that is live, and the sense of a crowd. And there is certain ways in which I create the sense of a crowd. If you're doing a space for something else where maybe the sense of the crowd is not so important, maybe individuals can be represented differently, but you pick what are the channels that are important to communicate, and everything else is like sort of auto-completed by us. And is when you strike the right balance of abstraction and figuration, or things being literal, that becomes a remarkable experience, no?
Let's make a move, let's say 10 years forward from now on, with much more advanced technology, with avatars that look like us right now, so like really real. How do you think the entire events industry will be evolving when technology will be at a level that we cannot think of today, but will be much more replicating real life, and will be of much higher quality when it comes to imagery, when it comes to sound, when it perhaps also comes to haptic technology. So maybe you can create sensors that enable to create haptic experiences somewhere else in the world. So can you imagine a future like that for events?
Yeah, I wanted to add something first, if I'm allowed to the question before, why is it games, why is it spaces we know? I think, looking at art in virtual worlds or using headsets, that's sort of very new, and only very few people have headsets or are even interested in digital art. I mean, there was a big hype due to the lockdown. But if we're honest, before that, it was a topic for nerds, internet art, net art. I mean, it was just a really small crowd we could reach, and now there's a boom. And if we can't just expect that everyone has a VR set, or that people are as interested as, let's say, nerds in a positive way, to, I don't know, find crazy spaces that are very futuristic. I think why Manuel's show went that well was because we used a space that it's so well known that everyone loves. It's a brutalist church, it's an iconic building, it's an iconic gallery space. So it was so interesting for people to experience this space in a new way. And I think that's how, you know, people can get used to experience art in the digital space. And also that's why Tom created a 2D video game and not a 3D, you know, to give people something they are used to and they know. And we call it exercise and not in useless, exercise and hopeless nostalgia. That's how we called it the World Wide Web, because of his last name. It's web. And yeah, I think that's quite important. And now let me get back to the question you just asked. I don't know if in 10 years it's going to be a replication, because I think in 10 years we can be much further and do things that don't replicate what we know right now. I mean, we do this because people need to get used to, but maybe in 10 years we can do crazy things. So I don't think that we can imagine what happens in 10 years. I mean, I have this, can I say one last thing? I mean, I have this book here by James Lovelock, Novozen. He says, well, that humans are going to disappear from the earth and at some point, and that artificial intelligence takes over. I mean, these are futuristic visions that are out there. So let's see if we're still around in a couple of years.
Well, we could make perfect versions of,
yeah.
I mean, without Botox.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there are certain things we can quite accurately speculate on just by, we spent a lot of our time with our students and with our work doing research just generally in how this whole world and the economy around this stuff is evolving. And one thing that we can know for sure, if something really drastic doesn't happen, is that in 10 years, screens will be less and less common. All of the big tech companies have a goal to phase out iPhones and monitors and TVs, and they will not, in 20 or 30 years, no one will have a monitor of any kind anymore. And that will mean a huge difference for how work and how play and everything is done, and all of the things that we normally now do inside, because this technology is sensitive. Computers
and stuff be replaced by screens,
by glasses. And this is what they're all betting on. I mean, they're putting, it's going to happen, which means also that it will be much more blended with other parts of life. And for instance, story living, that's something a friend of ours, Nandi Nobel, speaks a lot about, who works in this field, where the kind of things that are now slightly separate, like the story kind of drive in things like TikTok and other apps, will become things that are surrounding us, spatial memes. And you might be, you literally walking on the street, you might look to others like a 14-meter tall duck with a hat on or whatever. And these things will be much more integrated into all other parts of life, where eventually we will look back probably at our time when things were like in little boxes. This word was in this computer and the other word was in this computer. And
yeah, and much more integrated to the built environment and to the environment around you. I mean, one could imagine that it's not maybe so much about going to the gallery, or maybe yes, but maybe it's also about receiving a physical object that somehow unlocks a lot of things in relationship to the environment in which it is experienced. So I think the bringing in the whole body is what will be very important, and that is something that the removal of the monitor, the removal of the frame, going like onto a sort of rococo, jumping out of the frame, everything jumps out of the frame kind of world, is what will really change stuff. We had our first experiences with our headset outdoors, and that was quite exciting and interesting when suddenly you are just like walking around wherever you want. That's a completely different thing.
Mm-hmm. I need to round up, because we are more than 1 hour in right now. So thank you guys. It's really, really, really interesting to listen to you and to get a peek inside your heads regarding the future. Actually, there's been a lot of questions. I only mentioned a couple, but we're running out of time. So perhaps this conversation can be taken place elsewhere online. What I can take away from this listening to you is that we should, going forward, think independent from the medium. So if you want to create something physical, make it really physical. If you want to create something online, make use of the capacities of what you can do online, etc., etc. But whatever you do, connect human beings, because that's what they are mostly interested in. And that's the basis of a successful event, connecting human beings. And you can create stronger connections if you enable these human beings to participate in whatever they are doing. And you are talking about a 14-meter tall duck. If they can express themselves in a much better ways than currently is possible. And last but not least, there are ways, and there will be more ways in the future, to make digital happenings more physical. So in the future, I can imagine that digital events, virtual events will take place that make use of your body. And that will all take place without screens, but with glasses. My bet would be lenses even. I'm a contact lens wearer myself usually. That's when I'm really close to a screen. Or
it's really difficult to do, but yeah, one day for sure.
And last thing I would like to say, apart from thanking you again a lot, is that leaves a lot of room for creatives, for designers, for architects, for artists to explore this new territory. And this is something great to take away in these rather dark times of COVID-19. And this is my farewell for today. Thank you, audience. Thank you, panel members. Thank you, Lara, Fredrik, Anika, and Bart, for sharing your insights and your experiences. We will continue with Frame Live next week. I think next week, Wednesday. Stick close to FrameWeb and to our newsletters to stay informed. October will be a really busy month for us regarding Frame Live. We will be speaking with individuals. We will be speaking with panels like these about the workplace, about homes, how to make homes greener in the future. And the last thing before I say goodbye is that you will find a recording of this session online early next week with a recap written as well. Thank you all for being with us. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.